All right, good afternoon and welcome back. This is our first real tutorial session. This is kind of what they're intended to be. I'm going to answer some questions about the lecture, which granted only got posted last night, and I'm usually going to try to get them up on the Monday, so you have a little bit more of a chance to watch them. But I'm still just catching up on the last few things. And I think after this week, I'm fully caught up and it'll be a normal schedule. As I mentioned, it's been a hectic beginning and I look like I haven't slept all night. And that is true because that is not a healthy way to live, but it is a way to live when you have a lot of work to get done. So my plan for today is I'm going to quickly show you what I changed on the website because I posted a lecture. I'll show you where to find that. It's slightly different. It's no longer on YouTube, just for those lectures. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the first assignment. It's not quite finished, but it's finished the stuff that I need you to follow along with, the more complicated things. So I'm going to show you those. And then I will post the reflection. So we have a reflection this week on your personal assessment of your nutrition. So basically that goes hand in hand with this assignment very well, where you're going to decide, have I been meeting my nutrition goals? Is there something I could improve? So each of these things has a due date. The reflection is going to be due next week, Tuesday. That is October the 5th. Yes, perfect. Thank you. So that's going to be due next week, Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. That gives me the afternoon to try to get through and mark some of them for you to get those back to you ASAP. The next thing we have up is our first quiz is officially due on Monday, so just the day before that, at 11:59 p.m. Remember, I gave an extra week because of the whole weird, hectic beginning. And the assignments I am currently making due next week, Friday at 11:59 p.m. But I'm going to see if there's any sort of issues people have been having, but that should be enough time to complete an assignment. Like I said, it'll take about an hour to 2 hours to get through. I believe I heard someone that wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, sorry. Can you repeat that? So what was due on the 5th?
So rather than repeat that this way, let me show you one thing that I wanted to show you where the lecture is posted on the, am I sharing my screen? I think I accidentally clicked to share the whole screen. No. Okay, perfect. So it's got a big glow around there, which it usually only does when I'm sharing the entire screen. So let me enter the student preview and let me now share the, here we go. So this will answer your question. If I go to the website, well, it wasn't a question, but you're requesting me to post some due dates. So I'm going to show you the thing that I changed. I've posted my first pre-recorded lesson. It was longer than I intended, but I have to get used to talking to nobody. It's a little bit weird. And it's under recorded lessons, Microsoft Stream. Or you can go to our weekly folders and go to week 4 weight management, and it should pop up down here as well. Now, it shouldn't say to see this content, sign in, because you should be signed in already. So let me just see if it needs me to reconfirm. Nope. I'm going to have to edit that out because I contained some of my friends' emails, but that's okay. All recipes, I was looking up recipes for this assignment. Let me just switch out of the student preview mode because I know I'm signed in as a professor and that'll just make it easier.
Hi, Professor. I played the video. It is played pretty well.
Yeah, it should play pretty well. And that's why I'm sort of cheating here. I'm going to the, okay, it wants me to log in. So very quickly, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm just going to close my browser and I'm just going to re-log into my Seneca because sometimes Seneca loses my authentication and it gets confused. So I'm logging in. Now they know, hey, it's me, I'm here. I'm opening up my course. I'm checking
for me, is working For me, it's working as well because I'm already logged in on my Seneca.
Yeah, and that's why it's weird that it isn't working for me. I'm just dealing with it quickly behind the scenes. Two-factor authentication, stay signed in, no. And I am now logged in. Perfect. So let me start sharing the screen again. And we can continue. Here we, man, I look like I'm rough. Let's go back to our website here. So let me go back to the student preview because it should work now. And if I go to the weekly folders, week 4, I've made it so that it's embedded, so it's a little bit more accessible. And it's the recorded lecture for chapter 8, weight management. But like I said, you can also access these. I'm going to be posting them under recorded lessons, Microsoft Stream. And the reason I switched from YouTube for these is because the publisher slides do contain copyrighted material, and I have to be a little more careful about controlling access to it. And using Microsoft Stream is a way I can actually limit it to only Seneca students in my course, rather than potentially leaking it out of the institution. So if I click play, I'm going to just turn down the volume. I'm going to maximize the window. I could also click the link to open it in Microsoft Stream itself if I wanted to go to the sort of full thing, but I will close this and I'll go back to this view. I'm going to maximize it and I'm just going to jump to the end. And I'm going to reshare the screen because there's some audio here. So let me turn on the sound. Let me turn on the sound over here. And we'll hear what I have to say. And this will be a chance to write down the due dates, and I'll also post an announcement with the class as well, so that we can talk a little bit more about that, which means the things we should be aware of this week hopefully are next week on Tuesday, I think it is, our second quiz, I believe, is, or our first quiz is due. So I pushed that back a week. So it's sometime next week, whether Monday or Tuesday, I'm not sure. It says on the quiz itself, Monday. And our assignment is going to get posted. Assignment 1 on nutrition in the kitchen. That's only going to be due, I think I'm going to give a good 2 weeks for that. Okay. So you have some time to work on it. There's also a reflection I'm putting up this week. That reflection is going to be due next week before Wednesday. So I'm going to put the due date and it'll be similar to the last one, which I'm okay. And I'll just quickly pause it here. So I got the assignment due date wrong. I'm giving a full 2 weeks, not a week and a half. So that'll help out a little bit. Quiz 1 due Monday, October 4th at 11:59 p.m. Assignment 1, can I get rid of this? Is due on Wednesday, October 13th, so 2 weeks from today. And the reflection 2, which I'm going to be posting later, will be due next week, Tuesday. I can't get rid of this view unless I click play, which I can do, at October 5th at 11:59 p.m. So these are the due dates. I'm also going to post them as an announcement, just so that it's a little easier to access. Okay. The other thing I was going to say is these videos, this is what I had originally intended, is at the beginning of each week, I'll post a sort of summary of the main concepts, and they won't all be this long. This is me kind of getting used to talking to the computer without having an audience. And there's a lot of stuff in this unit regardless, but I do cover all of the material. And I should say that this material, I have myself muted, so I'm not going to be talking in the background, is basically the stuff you would see in the textbook. I'm not going over anything new. I'm just adding a little additional context. For example, when we talk about BMI, I show you how to do some example calculations to calculate your BMI, and we talk about it a little bit more. At some point, there's another calculation that I do for my metabolic rate to calculate roughly how much energy I use. And I can't quite remember where that is. I think over here. And that's another place where I'm just giving a little extra context to the material. But if you feel strongly that your reading skills are solid and that you get the material, you don't necessarily have to watch the lecture. I'm just trying to help explain it. This course was intended originally to be entirely read on your own because it's an asynchronous course. This is just extra to give it a little context, and so you know that there's someone that's willing to help explain it to you. So if you're a strong reader, you don't have to feel compelled to watch these videos. Anything that anything that I add to it that isn't in the textbook won't be covered on the quizzes, so you don't have to worry there. So I'm going to stop that video here. As I mentioned, you can find it either under the new folder called Recorded Lessons, Microsoft Stream, and it's going to make sure that you're logged into Seneca before it lets you play it, or the weekly folders, which I'm going to continue to update, which will always have the material you need. It has a link to the readings, and I'm going to give you a little reminder on these readings. If for some reason on your notifications, they tell you that a reading assignment is past due, I noticed that it apparently sends you notifications which send you into a panic. They're not for marks. None of the readings are for marks. There is supposed to be a way to reduce stress, to show what readings need to be done when, but then they increased stress when it started sending students past due reminders. Not worth any marks. Ignore anything related to the readings. I might just get rid of the due dates on them so it doesn't send any of those notifications, but the due dates were there to help you keep track.
In regards to that, also we have some quizzes to complete in the textbook itself. So are those graded or are they not graded?
So when you say quizzes, for example, if you're doing the smart book reading, do you mean those quizzes?
Yes, while doing the smart book reading, it suggests to do some questions to follow up your readings. How's your...
Those are absolutely not going to be graded. So the reason they exist there, and that's why I mentioned if you do the smart book readings, if you do the smart book readings, it takes a lot longer because it forces you to learn the content and then quizzes you at the end to make sure you learn the content. Those are not going to be graded. They won't be worth any marks other than if you have the time and you think that's useful to you, it's a way to just test yourself. So for instance, if I open up the readings, the smart book questions, and I clear all the clutter on my screen, you'll see that it says in red, these are not worth any marks in the course. The grade given is only for your own knowledge. They do not count towards any grade. There's no loss if you do not use this and use regular readings. And then it says, hopefully you can tell I'm emphasizing that these do not count for any marks because I know people would be nervous about it. No marks whatsoever. It's just your own assessment to see how you're understanding the material. The only thing worth marks will be these quizzes, which are graded quizzes.
And I am trying to be smart actually. So if we complete all the quizzes that we have, that you have assigned to complete, so do we need to purchase the book for that or we can skip that?
So the textbook is the official required book, and we do need the textbook in order to do the quizzes and to access the the whole, where's my button here, to access the electronic textbook and to access everything else. All right, so I also wanted to talk a little bit, as I mentioned, our textbook is required. It's got all the material there. It's needed to do the Connect quizzes, but it's a lot of reading. So if you only do the readings and you don't watch the lecture and you don't come to tutorial sessions, in other words, you're totally self-sufficient and you feel confident, you can do extremely well in the course. I'm setting it up so the quizzes only come from the readings, and the assignments that I give you are going to draw from the textbook readings, and they might have a little extra element added to it where you have to go to an external website or add something, but I'm going to be supplying that to you and I'm going to be guiding you through it. So you can do extremely well with only doing the readings, but everyone has a different learning style. And one of the things that I noticed when I was talking to or reading about previous students in this class and doing surveys is a lot of people wanted the option to have a video that explains things. So I'm putting that there as an additional option. But if you don't watch the video because it does take up a lot of time and you're comfortable with the readings, see how you do in the quizzes, see if you feel like you understand the material pretty well, and that's totally fine. Okay, so I think that's all the updates. As I mentioned under reflections, I'm going to post a second one later on, hopefully tonight or possibly by tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. But the last thing I really wanted to talk about was the first major assignment. So I'm late in putting it up. It was supposed to go up in week 2, but it's going up in week 4. But the result is pretty much the same. It kind of works with our reflection, which is on our nutrition anyway. And I was going to give you originally about 3 weeks to work on it. So now I'm giving 2 weeks to work on it, which is more than enough time. It also means that we're going to have it due just after Thanksgiving. So a lot of us are going to be having nutrition and portion sizes on the mind. So I think that kind of is appropriate for a time to hand it in. Now, as I mentioned, that assignment I am still working on a little bit, but let me show you what you will be doing overall. And let me just open it up here, switch my screen over. I already showed a little bit of it last time, but I'm going to show a little bit of the rest. So I have it in Word format right now. Like I said, I'm finalizing the last few things, but I want to go over the main details. There's 2 major sections to this assignment. The first one, where you're finding a prepackaged food. I use the example of some junk food because unfortunately, I always happen to have a good amount of that around. And I used Pizza Pops, which had all of the nutrient information there, such as they are. Now, for this one, you're going to be analyzing the food label of a packaged food, and you're going to write down a couple numbers. And those numbers include the amount of carbohydrates, the amount of dietary fiber, the difference between those, and you use the 449 rule that we talked about last time to calculate the number of calories. So just as a quick example, let's say we had food that had 10 grams of carbohydrates, but 3 grams of that is dietary fiber, which can't be digested. That means that there's really only 10 minus 3 or 7 grams of carbohydrates that can actually give us energy. And the 449 rule says that for each gram of carbohydrates, we get 4 calories with a capital C, which remember means a kilocalorie. So 7 times 4, 7, 14, 21, 28, 28 calories from that amount. And this is an exercise in seeing if you can calculate the overall calorie content from a nutrition label and read some of the extra vitamins or extra hazardous things like sodium, cholesterol, saturated fats, trans fats, and just kind of recognize what is on your food that you're eating. So that part I talked about last time, and it's going to be in a fillable PDF. And I'm also going to make the Word document available just because there will be some technical issues. So I'm going to make it so it can be completed in a few different ways, whichever works for you. The second part, oh, there'll also be 1 or 2 questions about it, is the kind of fun part. Well, fun is the loose word that I'm using here. I think it's fun, but it does involve a little math. So I'm a little weird in that way, where you're going to write down a recipe or find a recipe online for something that you either like to make, you think is really unhealthy, or maybe it's just something that you have made before and you eat all the time and you want to analyze it a little bit more. And what you're going to do is either write down the recipe or find a recipe online and copy it into this sort of recipe box I'm going to have. And for simplicity's sakes, I made a BLT sandwich because it had a small number of ingredients and it was easy to work with. but I'm going to say that the recipe should have at least 3 ingredients, which almost every recipe will, and includes the name of each ingredient and some sort of measure of quantity. So let's say my BLT sandwich, which I'm going to write a recipe here for, involves 2 slices of some sort of a whole wheat or whole grain bread. I'm going to say it involves 3 slices of fried bacon. So it's not a healthy sandwich by any means. It contains 1 medium leaf or some sort of an amount of iceberg lettuce. So again, this has very little nutritional value. Iceberg lettuce doesn't really have much to it. It would be better to go for like romaine or something, but nevertheless, I'm going with the classic. And 3 slices of red tomato. I'm going to say this is my sandwich. And you can look up a recipe. That's why I had all recipes open, or other websites that you know have recipes. I'm going to check the chat because I'm getting some messages here. So the message in chat where I got the 10 carbohydrates for the previous example, I made it up. I just made it up for that particular example so I could show the math. That's why. So I've got my recipe here. And I have 2 slices of whole grain bread, 3 slices of fried bacon, 1 medium leaf iceberg lettuce, 3 slices of red tomato. I could have also looked up a recipe online and pasted it into my assignment. That would be fine. Find something you're interested in. The fewer ingredients, the less math there is. But if you're honestly curious about this, you might not mind doing a little extra math. Well, the next part involves making our own nutrition label for this recipe. And we're going to use an actual website. So this is a company's website that allows use for educational purposes, called Very Well Fit. And I'm going to open this link, and let's see if it actually opens in Chrome. Yes, it did. So I'm going to switch my screen over to there. And this makes this part of the assignment pretty simple. It's an analyzer where I can enter a recipe name. Let's call it a BLT sandwich. And it asks me to just enter the recipe ingredients. Now, there's a good chance my recipe isn't going to work perfectly, where I had my 2 slices of whole grain bread, but let's see what we get. So I just pasted my recipe. I'm going to say I'm going to have 1 serving, and I'm going to say that 1 enter serving size. This is optional, but I'm going to say 1 sandwich is what I expect people to eat. When I click analyze recipe, it'll tell me 2 slices whole grain bread. Bleh, it found Wonder Bread. I could edit this if I don't agree with this, because Wonder Bread isn't maybe the best whole grain bread. I could maybe click the pencil, and it would give me a place where I could go through all the options. So for instance, I might instead say whole grain bread Milton's and change it. Now, it also changed this number here, and I can select grams or slice in this case. So I'm going to do slices of bread because that makes sense. 2 slices. It had trouble with fried bacon. So let's manually enter it. Let's click the pencil. Let's search for bacon. And I have a couple options: pork, cured, bacon, cooked, broiled, pan fried, or roasted, bacon and beef sticks, pork, cured, bacon, breakfast strips. I can pick something that I think looks pretty close to what I'm thinking about. Let's do bacon here. And select measurement is slices. They actually have slices as a unit that I can use. So I'll pick 3 slices and I'll update. And I'll do the same thing for medium leaf iceberg lettuce. It had no idea what I was talking about. So let's just search for lettuce. Let's see if they have iceberg lettuce somewhere in the list. And they have iceberg lettuce from Fresh Direct. Okay, they have a couple different brands here. And I'm going to have 1. I could do 1 cup of iceberg lettuce. If I don't like it, I can go back and I can say, well, let's try another one of the iceberg lettuces to see if it's already in the system. Includes CRISPR types. Let's try this one. This one does grams. There was one I found that did leaves pretty well. So let's do loose leaf raw. One. Somewhere around here, there is one. So if I can't find it, I'll just estimate whatever is the closest because I'm not going to be being very picky about this. Leaf lettuce, try that. Update. That's probably not accurate, but a cup of iceberg lettuce is way too much. So I'll just take one more look here. Iceberg lettuce. I didn't think that I would be stuck on iceberg lettuce as my ultimate arch nemesis. Let's try butterhead iceberg lettuce. One large leaf, one medium leaf. Sure. Something worked out where I could find a leaf. I'll update it. And finally, slices of red tomato. Let's just do red tomato. Tomatoes red, ripe, raw, year round. Sure. And I don't want 3 tomatoes. I want 3. Let's do something like medium or thin slices of tomatoes. Update. This website's pretty handy because once you're comfortable with what you've entered here, it's going to give you a little nutrition label. Now, the accuracy won't necessarily be perfect, but it's a great estimate of what's in your food. And we can see, for example, serving size, I said 1 sandwich. The serving is defined by what I entered over here. Calories, 497 calories. Total fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, all the good stuff that I want to copy down. So yeah, there's a couple different food tracker options. I'm picking one that I'm sort of saying as the official one for the assignment, not because it's better, but just because keeping it a little more standardized will make the assignment easier. So I'm going to recommend this one, but you might get some resources from elsewhere if you need it. Now, going back to my assignment here and sharing my screen. That took us a few minutes and we got the information we needed. So this is what I'm saying, as long as you feel comfortable, it's only going to take you an hour or two to really do this assignment. And I could go through and I could fill in the information from the website where we said a serving size was 1 sandwich and the servings were 1. I'm going to eat 1 sandwich and I could write in the numbers that I got. I have one section here for vitamins and minerals. On the Canadian food nutrition label, there are 13 things that are required to be there. Let's see if this is it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The 13 things that are required are listed in the top here. Other things could be additional vitamins or minerals that aren't the required 13. You could add if your nutrition label has them and you wanted to write them down. But I'm really only focusing on the main 13, as well as filling in our % daily value, which again, the website generates nicely for us. There will be 1 or 2 questions asking, for example, is there anything particularly bad about your recipe? Is there anything good about your recipe? Is it a source of any significant vitamins or minerals? Things about analyzing the recipe you made. The very final thing is a little more annoying, but this is a little more time consuming, but it's also not bad. And the final thing is just kind of looking at your individual ingredients. There's one more website, which is a powerful tool I want us to be able to use, and it's the Government of Canada's food nutrition website. So I'm going to click this to open it, and I'm going to quickly show you what I'm asking in the assignment. It asks me to list my ingredient, the amount used in my recipe. Then I'm going to keep track of the total amount of carbs minus dietary fiber, kind of like we did in the first one. Total amount of protein, total amount of fat for each ingredient. So this is where we're breaking down our ingredients. That's why if you keep it to maybe 3 or 4 ingredients, the assignment's a little easier because it's showing that you can calculate it, but it's not going to be overly tedious. So let's start off with whole grain bread, and let me switch over to this website. By the way, these instructions will be written in the assignment as well, but it's just nice to see it happen in front of you because it makes it a little bit easier to understand. The URL takes you to a tool put out by the Canadian government where you can search reference values for each ingredient in your kitchen. For instance, if I wanted to do whole grain bread, you can see I've already tried searching things here: bread, lettuce. Let's try bread. And I'm going to do food search. It gives me a good list of different breads. There's bread crumbs, bread stick, bread stuffing, bread fry bread, but that's a little, vague. If I wanted to, I could add a filter such as whole wheat, and it's going to just show me the whole wheat breads. And I'm going to click on one of them that I think matches my recipe the best: whole wheat commercial bread. The next page, it asks you, well, what serving size would you like to consider? It gives me grams or slices. Well, since I made my recipe in slices, let's pick slices. And it's going to generate a profile of the nutrients for 1 slice of bread. By clicking generate nutrient profile, it now gives me this list of information per 1 slice. So the final step here is to copy down this information, but I also need to make sure I'm paying attention to the amounts. For instance, in my sandwich, I had 2 slices of bread. This is per slice. So whatever values I see here will have to be times 2 because I have 2 slices of bread. So for instance, protein is 3.24 grams times 2 will give me 6.48 grams of protein from my bread. Carbohydrate, I have to be more careful about because I want the total carbohydrate minus the dietary fiber. We're getting a little pickier here. So my total carbohydrate is 11.14 times 2 because there's 2 slices, 22.28 grams. And down here, I have total dietary fiber 1.3 times 2 is 2.6 grams. So this is where the math is basic. It's addition and subtraction. 22.28 minus 2.6. This tells me that the carbohydrates I can actually digest 28 minus 2.6 equals 19.68 grams. This is the number I want. And finally, total fat, well, 0.46 grams times 2 equals 0.92 grams. So this is why I say this part's a little more tedious, but again, we did 1/4 of it here in just a few minutes, and that was me slowly going through it and explaining it as we went. So let me switch my screen over to the actual assignment again. Here we go. And I could write some of those values down. It just so happens that I have them written on another sheet of paper here because I pre-did this because I actually planned ahead for once. And so I would write whole grain bread, mountain recipe, 2 slices, total carbs. I would recommend showing the work here, 11.14 grams. Actually, oh, this is where I screwed up. Haha, I didn't even actually calculate it right. That was 22.28 grams minus 2.6. That's why my last number was so off. And that was 19.68 grams. Well, the same thing from protein here. I calculated that there was 6.48 grams of protein because there are 2 slices, and there's 0.92 grams of fat. And just to make it less tedious, I would then take a few more minutes and I would look up the other items, bacon, lettuce, tomato, and I've just copied over the math that I've done before. The last step here, total amount of each. Well, the total amount of fiber that we can digest is the sum of all these values, 19.68. And if you're scared of math, absolutely don't worry. One of my plans is to maybe also put out a Excel spreadsheet to help you do the calculations so you don't have to, stress out too much. But I get 22.65 grams over here. Protein, 6.48 plus 8.04 plus 0.07 plus 0.8 gives me 15.39. And the same thing for fat would give me 11.61. And then finally, just like we did for the first one, let's see if the calories match after we've looked up the individual ingredients, or it's least close. 22.65 grams of carbohydrates we can digest times 4 using the 449 rule is 90.6 calories. Then we have 61.56 calories and 104.49 calories if we go through all of the calculations for these things. Add them up, 90.6 plus 61.56 plus 104.49 gives us not quite the same, 256.65, but at least it's not like 10 times different from the amount our calculator did. The purpose for this part isn't to be the most accurate that you can possibly be. It will be different. That's completely fine. This is where I'll ask some questions like, is there any particular ingredient that is contributing too high in carbs or too high in fat? Would you change the recipe? If so, what ingredient would you change and why? This is to get you thinking about the individual components of the recipe. And again, there'd be 1 or 2 questions.
Professor, could you just, sorry to interrupt, could you just repeat how did you calculate total carbs?
Yes, for sure. So after I got my information from the Canadian government website, that was these values that I calculated before, the carbohydrates minus the dietary fiber. And the reason I did that is because this is the portion that we can actually digest. Then we wrote down the protein and we wrote down the fats. Well, remember from last week, there's the 449 rule, which says for every gram of carbs, there's 4 calories, every gram of protein, 4 calories, every gram of fat, 9 calories. And so by adding up all my digestible carbs, which was 22.65, adding up all the protein, 15.39, and adding up all the fat, 11.61, we could then multiply each value by the 4, 4, or 9 according to the rule, which gave me 90.6 calories from carbohydrates, 61 calories from the protein, and 104 calories from the fat, meaning the biggest source of calories is this bacon, and it's by far the biggest source of fat as well, which might be something where, well, maybe we'll cut the bacon from the BLT and just make an LT or something like that. Finally, this is just the sum of all 3 numbers for my total calories. It's a little mathy, but at the same time, it shouldn't be something that scares us. For a nutrition course, if you are worrying about your nutrition and your dietary intake, you're going to be counting calories and you're going to be counting nutrition anyway. So that's why this is strictly to get us a little bit more comfortable working with some of the math and thinking about the foods that we're taking in. I know I'm going to start doing this and it's going to be shameful, I'm sure. So let me pop up a quick poll. And like I said, I'm going to upload this as soon as I can. And I'm just finishing it off today. Quick questions. See if there's any quick questions about the assignment. Let me click over to my mouse thing. Yes or no. I'm just going to do this super quick here. Save, launch. to see if anyone had any quick questions. Because that's basically it. The only other thing I would mention is I'm going to put up the reflection as soon as I can, but it's again going to just be your own assessment of your diet so far. It's going to be a little bit lower key than it was last time around, just because I know you're working on this assignment here. So I'm just going to ask you to think about your diet and answer a few questions. But the assignment will be the big thing, but you still have 2 weeks to work on it.
I'm
So
sorry.
there are two questions. Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I marked yes, but actually I don't have.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
read and then I marked it. I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Don't worry about it. Anyone else have any other questions, or did the other person also accidentally mark it? I do that all the time. I'll check in chat. They might be typing it in chat. I definitely need more sleep. There's a question here. What if our nutrition label does not have vitamins or iron or calcium? Good question. So some people are already checking some recipes and putting it through the very well fit thing. In those cases, I'm going to write this in the instructions as well. If you don't have the various items, so this one doesn't have, what do I have listed here? This thing that it generated for me doesn't have vitamin A, for example. There's no vitamin A listed here. I can just write in the assignment itself either 0 because it's telling me it has no vitamin A, or something like not applicable, meaning you couldn't find it, or something like that. I'm not going to be marking these on the accuracy of it too terribly well. I'm marking it more that you did it and you learned something from it where you're answering the questions later. Yes, so the question is, you asked if assignment is due on the 13th, and do you need to make the spreadsheet, or am I giving you the spreadsheet? So I'm giving you this assignment. It's just not formatted fully. I've been working on this until now, and I'm hoping to get it up tonight, which means that there will be a spreadsheet that you can fill in yourself, kind of like the fillable PDF I showed last time. And I might make an Excel version, which helps you do some of the math, because I really care more about the analysis and the thinking of it part. But I'm going to give you something that you just fill in. So you don't have to start from scratch and write all this. It just takes a long time to format it. That's why I've been a little bit delayed here. And I'm looking off to the side because that's where I have the chat window. I'm not looking away from people. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to talk about. That assignment, like I said, it seems like it's a lot until you sit down and say, listen, I'm going to find a recipe. I'm going to find these values. You're going to get comfortable with the websites. It might take you an hour or two, maybe take a little longer just to double check everything. But in the end, these assignments are worth a decent amount. So if I go back to my website and I go over to course information, and I'm just going to clear the screen here, we'll see that each of these assignments is worth 10%. So you could expect to spend just a small handful of hours on it, but it's also not going to be so bad because we just did it together in a few minutes. We didn't quite do everything, but we got the hard stuff done. And remember, you can always book an appointment with me if you had some questions, or you could always come to the next tutorial and ask about the assignment, and I'd go over things again. So let me do one last rerun of this poll to see if there's any last questions. Aside from that, I didn't have anything else I was really going to talk about, unless you had questions. Feel free to take a look at the recording if you wanted to look at a little extra guidance. Remember, if you read it on your own and you're comfortable with that, you should be good. But if you read it and you say, hey, I have no idea what BMI is, then you could look up the recording, go to the part where I talk about BMI and see if that answers your question, and then end it there. Okay, so it looks like there's no questions here. So once again, remember, these aren't required, but I do appreciate when you come here and ask questions because I know that you're getting the information. So let me stop sharing everything here. I'll try to get this up as soon as I can. Everyone, take care. Have a great evening. Good luck with everything else. I'll post announcements that have these due dates and stuff as well. So you just stay tuned and it'll all get up there pretty soon. Have a great evening. Stick around if you had some questions you wanted to ask after the recording ends, and I'll see you around. Bye. Let me stop the recording.